Good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Dr. Larrier.
Good afternoon, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you this afternoon?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm so excited that we're having this webinar. It's called the Cultivating Culturally Responsive. Cultivating Culturally Responsiveness in diverse settings and diverse places and spaces. I don't know why I'm having some difficulty talking this afternoon. I'm just very excited to be here. And I am Dr. Larrier, founding president of GCSCORED, and with me is
Good
Vanessa.
afternoon, everyone. My name is Vanessa Kelly-Brew, and I am also very excited to be here, part of this webinar today. So I'm looking forward to engaging with Dr. Larrier as well as with you all.
Yes. So let's see who's attending this afternoon so far. We have Jasmine Frazier, we have Melanie. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for coming and joining us. We're going to get started because we have a limited time. We have 1 hour and we respect your time. And we know that many of you are sacrificing your lunch break to join us. So if you have some house rules, if you have any comments or questions that you want to share with us or ask, please write it in the chat. And we will try our best to make sure we get back with you with an answer during this 1 hour period. So let's begin. I'm going to share my screen with our presentation for today. All right. So we are going to be talking about this Black History Month 2022, how to cultivate cultural responsiveness in diverse places and spaces. To just give a little background, this is who we are. This is Vanessa and Dr. Larrier. I see a raised hand in the chat. If you could write your questions. 2 participants have their hand raised. I wonder if it's because is there an issue with sound or something? But I don't want to go ahead. I don't want to go ahead until we clarify what the issue is.
From what I can see, it just appears that everyone is saying hello.
Oh, hello. Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right. Okay. All right. We see Dr. Okra. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Okra. All right. All right. So at the end of this webinar, you will learn what it means to cultivate cultural responsiveness, why cultivating cultural responsiveness matters, what does cultural non-responsiveness look like, and how to cultivate cultural responsiveness. How do you do that? And then after you've done that, after we've given this information, what's next? What's next? Okay. What is next? Cultivate, Vanessa?
Yeah, so what does it mean to cultivate? And so the definition that we give here at GCSCORED is to cultivate means to foster the growth of, encourage, further, nurture, promote, nourish, advance, and incubate.
Right. And so what we're going to do this afternoon in this short time is do three things that we always do. We educate, equip, and empower. Okay. We educate, equip, and empower. And so we're breaking down the term that we've publicized, cultivating cultural responsiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So we just talked about cultivate. Let's go to the next definition. And this is culture. What does culture mean? Right? It is a set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices, the characteristic features of everyday existence shared by people in a place or space.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this diagram here, we see this infographic here, where 10% of what we understand of culture is seen, and 90% of what we understand culture to be is unseen. And we know that in our, and Vanessa, jump in here at any time,
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
know that in our society, especially in the American culture, there is a lot of acceptance, right, for the 10% that is seen of cultures that are divergent or different than the mainstream culture, right? So the music of the culturally diverse groups is accepted. The games, the players, they're accepted to a certain extent, and we'll talk some more about that. Food, the festivals, all of those that are in the 10% observable component of culture is more readily acceptable or accepted than elements at the 90% non-observable. What do you want to say anything here, Vanessa?
Yeah, I just want to point out, as far as those things that are not recognizable, and these are some of the things we're going to be getting into today, but you will notice thought processes. So that is something that we don't recognize. We experience it from others, but we don't readily recognize that. Body language. Now, that is something that we do recognize in people, but it can be interpreted in different ways, depending on the culture from which the person comes from. Right. So just nature of relationships.
Yes.
Those are very important things when we talk about culture and being culturally responsive.
That's correct. Some others, notions of beauty, what is accepted by the mainstream and what is seen as deviant or unprofessional, even by the mainstream. And so we want to pay attention more to the roots, right? The 90% is the non-observable, the root issues of culture. Cultural competence and responsiveness. Competence, Vanessa, you want to go read these definitions for us? We're in the educate segment of this webinar. Okay.
Sure. So cultural competence is the awareness, knowledge, and skills needed to function effectively with culturally diverse populations. And so we gain that definition from Sue and Sue. Culturally responsiveness is a person's ability to first and foremost be aware of and understand what it means to be responsive, and then follow that awareness up with action that leads them to respond empathetically, compassionately, justly, sensitively, kind-heartedly, with goodwill toward individuals who are culturally diverse of space and place.
Yeah, awesome. And I want to say, what I want to point out before we get to the next slide is this whole idea of cultural competence responsiveness is not a new construct. It is not new. If we go back, way back to Bible times, in the beginning, there is the issue of cultural responsiveness and cultural competence, right? It is the awareness, knowledge, and skills of to function effectively within culturally diverse populations. It is a person's ability to first and foremost be aware, recognize, understand how they show that they are culturally responsive, how they show that they are culturally competent by being compassionate, by being just, by being sensitive. If you look into Genesis, the story of Cain and Abel, that is one of the first accounts of what it means to be culturally responsive, right? Being kind-hearted, being just, where we see Cain and Abel, talking to each other. Am I talking to God? Am I my brother's keeper? Then we come to the New Testament, or even actually, I think there's some other references to the Old Testament in Deuteronomy. Where is it again? Deuteronomy 14. Mm-hmm. Right. It talks about how we as a society or societies must treat individuals who are immigrants, who are widows, parentless, right? So we're looking at how we respond to cultural groups, subcultural groups who are marginalized, who are invisible, who are voiceless, who are vulnerable. This is a construct that has been in existence even before we came up with these fancy names of cultural competence and responsiveness. So yes, we may be, sounding all intelligent, but understand this didn't begin with us, and it's not going to end with us. But while we're here, we must do our part to make this more than just a cognitive process. We need to make this actionable item, something that we do with others. Even in the New Testament, what's the reference in the New Testament, Vanessa?
It's a scripture from Luke. So Luke 10, and that is the parable where Jesus is asking who is considered our neighbors and how are we to treat our neighbors.
Exactly, right? So that's kind of where we want to kind of bring your mind, understanding the context, understanding what culture cultivating means, what culture means, what competence and responsiveness means, because it applies to us in our everyday situations. Mm-hmm. And you will see, we will show you some other ways in real time. All right, so cultural incompetence, what does that look like? What is that? You want to take this, Vanessa?
Sure. So cultural incompetence, this means when individuals who are in power or who are the dominant group impose their standards of normality and abnormality, appropriate and inappropriate behaviors, their ways of interacting and being upon culturally diverse individuals without consideration for cultural differences.
That's correct. And so when we look at, we looked at cultivating, we looked at cultural competence and responsiveness. It is awareness. It is the awareness of the differences in people. And we saw also that 90% of culture is unseen, is non-observable. And so it makes us think that it's very easy to show up as a culturally incompetent person. And I'm sure if we take a moment right? If we take a moment right now and think about what is one way that you, in your cultural context, wherever you are, in your cultural context, that you see, let's go with maybe dress, okay? How we dress. What do we consider appropriate and what do we consider inappropriate? Are we open to seeing that people dress differently in different cultures, and it doesn't mean that one is abnormal or normal, or that one is appropriate or one is not inappropriate, or one is professional and one is not professional. So we have to be very mindful of the unobservable cultural characteristics that we live on a day-to-day basis. So what we want to do right now is show you a compilation of videos that speaks to what happens when there is cultural incompetence, okay, when there is cultural incompetence, all right? I'm going to make sure that you can see. Are you seeing the beginning of the video, Vanessa?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. All right. So this video is about 10 minutes for our viewers, but I want you to pay close attention because we're going to have some discussion around the elements of this video as we move forward in this presentation, okay? It's coming on. The video is 12 minutes long. So I want you to pay attention. Don't leave. Pay close attention. Take some notes because we're going to have some discussion.
You can imagine the people who work at or have students attending HBCUs are uneasy and scared.
That's right. Alabama's civil rights leaders are speaking out against what they've characterized as a racist attack against schools and their students. News 19's Archie Snowden spoke to leaders today on those threats and joins us now with more in studio. Archie.
Thank you, Madison. Since the first day of Black History Month, these threats are still happening. Civil rights and community leaders held a virtual round discussion today to ease fears for some that say that these threats are frightening and they look like it is a reference to the past history in the United States.
Unfortunately, it is a part of a long legacy.
A week after a series of bomb threats against historically Black colleges and universities across the United States, Alabama's civil rights leaders are speaking out against what they characterized as racist attacks against the schools and their students.
Seeing these re-emerging kinds of tactics are extremely concerning.
The bomb threats against Fisk University in Nashville today brings the number of 20 colleges to receive a bomb threat. It's the fourth time for Howard University in the past 2 months. Civil rights leaders say that these acts reminds us that the bomb threats against Black learning institutions and houses of worship are deeply rooted in American history and should not be taken lightly.
When we think that they're one-off moments, or that they're not rooted in some sort of systemic practice and theory, that is when I feel the most uncovered. It's when I feel the most concern for alarm.
After the threats today, leaders believe that because of past history, now is the time to ramp up laws for these criminal acts of discrimination.
Historically, this is the correct moment to right that wrong, because it's not a quota. It's something that should have happened.
Alabama civil rights leaders believe that these threats to American institutions should be a moment to revisit how Black history is taught in school.
We can't just operate as if these things, didn't happen, or that they're not happening now, or, oh, it just happened one time, it's not going to happen again. Because history has shown us that there's a pattern to terrorism, there's a pattern to hate crimes.
Okay. I'm going to stop here for now and see if there's any comments, if there are any comments in the chat. What are your thoughts about, again, remember what we're talking about? We're talking about cultivating cultural responsiveness. And what did we say cultivate meant? What was the definition of cultivate? To promote, to nurture, to, where are the rest of my definitions? To, yes, to augment, to support, right? To incubate. What this first video says is ask the question, what are we cultivating? What are we promoting? What seeds are we planting? And what are we cultivating for us to have 20 bomb threats in 2022 to HBCUs across this country? Keep that question in mind. Okay? Keep that question in mind. All right, let's go to the next.
Race-fueled tensions at the Randfontein High School have once again brought racism in schools into sharp focus. Now, the South African Human Rights Commission and the Department of Education will be working together in developing a code of conduct that will help curb racism. Given the recent incident at Hoërskool Jan Viljoen, how will this code of conduct ensure that we do not see a similar incident in the future? To unpack this, we're joined virtually by Advocate Andre Gam from the South African Human Rights Commission. Advocate, thank you so much. Before we speak about this code of conduct that you're going to be working on, and I'm sure working on already, if we could just focus a little bit on this unfortunate story that again has hit the headlines at Hoërskool Jan Viljoen. Again, bringing into sharp focus these kinds of tensions at so many of our schools. This just one of them that happens to make it into the news, mainly because of social media. Again, us being able to see what's really going on. But I'm sure, and as much as there's any number of these kinds of incidents making the news, there's so many more that we don't even hear about in towns, villages, and areas across South Africa. What do you make of what we've seen unfold at Hoërskool Jan Viljoen?
Yes, unfortunately, I think it shows that racism and racial conflict and a lack of social cohesion is still a reality in our country. Because we should remember what happens in schools is also a reflection of what happens in society in general. And therefore, this is actually a manifestation of broader society.
Okay. What happens in schools is a reflection of what's happening in the broader society. Anything you want to say about that, Vanessa?
Only again, so far with the two videos that we have seen, we've talked about like this being systemic. And that this is still very real and very present today. And the videos that you are showing, these are recent videos.
Yeah.
Videos that have come out within the first couple months in this year alone. So again, very still systemic, very rooted in our history and what we are still witnessing today.
Right. A lack of social cohesion. This is in South Africa. The video I showed earlier was in the US. We're taking a trip around the globe because I want everyone to see that cultural competence and this awareness and responsiveness is a problem across the globe. It's a human problem. And there are ways for us to mitigate, for us to narrow this gap of cultural incompetence. Okay, so let's go to the next video. This is disparity shown by police officers breaking up a fight between Black and white teens.
So I want you to sit down and watch this as well. Two teenagers getting into a fist fight last weekend at a New Jersey mall, but when police arrived to break it up, the Black teenager was held to the ground and handcuffed, while the white teenager wasn't, and it is sparking outrage and actions of racial bias. CNN's Athena Jones has more on the story.
Accusations of racial bias by police after they broke up a fight between a pair of teenagers, one black, one white, at a New Jersey mall. A now viral video shows the teens having a heated discussion. The white teen pointing his finger in the face of the black teen, who pushes the white teen's hand away. The white teen then shoves the black teen, and the two begin to tussle. At one point, the white teen tackling the black teen and pinning him to a couch, then throwing him to the ground. When police arrive to break up the fight, a female officer pulls the white teen away and pushes him to the couch without handcuffs, while the other officer presses the black teen to the ground and kneels on his back. The female officer also coming over to kneel on the teen's upper back while they place him, and only him, in handcuffs.
Oh no! Holy
Treatment some viewed as unequal, unfair, and racially biased. One bystander exclaiming in surprise as police handcuffed the black teen.
Yo, it's because he's black.
CNN affiliate WCBS spoke with one of the teens involved, 14-year-old Kai, who asked that his last name not be used.
I was confused, why they saw me as a bad person, me as a aggressor.
The 8th grader telling CNN affiliate WABC the fight began after he stood up for a friend, a 7th grader, being picked on by the other teen, who the station identifies as a high school student. The teen calling the encounter with police scary and frustrating.
If they don't know how to treat the situation and deal with the situation equally and fairly, then they shouldn't be able to deal with the situation at all.
New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy saying,
I'm deeply disturbed by what appears to be a racially disparate treatment in the video. We are underscore with emphasis that we're committed to increasing the trust between law enforcement on the one hand and the communities they serve on the other.
All right. Commentary. Any comments in the chat so far? What I want to say while you're thinking, we do. Okay. While they're thinking, I want to point out that this issue of cultural incompetence and lack of cultural responsiveness is seen in every society, at every level and segment of society. We saw at the college and university level. We're seeing now in a shopping place, in a community where people gather, all kinds of people. We see it with the police force. We are seeing it with school-age children, where bullying is leading and is a part of the whole cultural incompetence and lack of responsiveness. Okay, what's in the chat?
Yeah, and so one of the things that I am going to repeat again is what was said earlier, is that what we see happening in schools is a clear reflection of what is happening outside of schools in reality, in the real world. And so in the chat we have here, I believe the name is Winnell Fuller, is saying that history is repeating itself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we see Caroline saying it is unfortunate that racism is still in progress. And we have another from John Ease. I think that this is a clear sign that we have lost our common humanity. People are judged and condemned even before they are heard. Mm-hmm. We have another, Sue Ann. The breaking up of the fight in the mall is such a good, sad example of disparity in treatment.
Yes.
And yet we see this all the time.
Yeah, over and over.
Yes.
And we haven't even touched on, and we're not going to be able to touch on the issues related to how it impacts our spirits and our souls and our minds. These videos that we're seeing. Okay, so let's look at another display really of cultural incompetence and lack of cultural responsiveness. Now in the world of sports. Let's play that.
This week brought a whole new scandal for the NFL when former Miami Dolphins coach Brian Flores filed a lawsuit accusing the league of racial discrimination against black coaches. Flores claims that teams are interviewing black coaches with no intention of actually hiring them. He says he had an interview with the Broncos where the executives showed up an hour late and clearly hungover, and he had an interview with the Giants that he knew was bullshit because the team had already decided to hire a different white coach. And the way he found out that they had already hired somebody is pretty wild.
Flores says he found out from Patriots coach Bill Belichick that the Giants had hired a head coach 3 days before he was scheduled to have an interview with the team.
The complaint states on January 24th, Belichick wrote, "Sounds like you have landed. Congrats." Flores responded saying, "Did you hear something I didn't hear?" Belichick texted back, "Giants?" Flores later texts Belichick to ask if he's texting the right coach before Belichick fesses up that he has the wrong man. "Sorry, I expletive this up. I double checked and I misread the text. I think they're naming Dable. I'm sorry about that."
Okay. Cultural incompetence. I want you to hear this word over and over. Cultural incompetence, lack of cultural responsiveness, and cultivating. Okay, we're very intentional about the words we chose. Cultivating cultural competence and responsiveness. How is that? How does it show up? And I'm sure what we're doing is showing you real time. All of these events took place in 2022, and we are on, today is February 21st, 2022. Okay, this is not something, these are not things that happened way in the past during slavery or during Jim Crow or last year, or this happened recently across this country, but also across the globe. We're experiencing a lack of cultural competence and responsiveness.
Dr. Larry, we have in the chat what you were just saying about this is happening in 2022. We have a comment from Jennifer, I believe it's Douglas, who says this should not be happening in 2022.
Yeah.
We also have, these are comments regarding the previous video that you showed with the two teams. The way the police acted show that their response is automatic. So they went automatically to the young Black male.
And why is that, right? The question is, what are we cultivating? Remember, cultivating. What are we planting? What are we promoting so that the coaches could do what they did, so that the individuals at the HBCUs who are putting these bombs or creating these bomb threats, what seeds are we planting? Because the only way you can get this type of fruit, this type of behavior, is because we're planting certain types of seeds. So we are planting seeds that are where we are reaping lack of cultural competence and lack of cultural responsiveness. Okay, let's look at the Security Council members' address in Munich. Talking about the inequalities with the distribution of the vaccines.
How difficult do you believe is it going to be for vulnerable countries going forward to get the kind of assistance they need when it comes to funding post-pandemic?
I mean, yeah, and I want to pick up with your point, but also what you were saying about one of the issues that's been exposed as a result of the pandemic, or further exposed as the result of the pandemic, is the unevenness and also the inequity of the international system. You know, and the other thing that I think has been exposed is the lack of cooperation and unity in terms of being able to identify where those needs were very quickly as well. So today we have a situation where only 4%, for example, of the vaccines have reached those countries that have a high level of a humanitarian crisis as well. So we talk about, you know, evenness, we talk about equity, and yet when you look close to the ground, you still see that the system itself is unable to make sure that it can guarantee access to those populations that are at the front line of the greatest needs as well. So I think one of the things that we talk about building back better, are we going to build back better the humanitarian system? Are we going to build back better to ensure that we deal with those societies that are most at the front line of the crisis? Are we going to build back better in terms of multilateral cooperation? Because we also saw at the time of an international global crisis, the Security Council, for example, was at the most dysfunctional because of those major power tensions. And we've seen how major power tensions has been overshadowed a lot of these crises as well. So when we talk about build back better, it's become a catch-all phrase.
When will it end? Is it ending now? One of the major questions being asked. Indeed, high vaccine coverage in some countries, combined with the lower severity of Omicron, is driving a dangerous narrative that the pandemic is over. But it's not. Not when 70,000 people a week are dying from a preventable and treatable disease. Not when 83% of the population of Africa is yet to receive a single dose of vaccine. Not when health systems continue to strain and crack under the caseload. Not when we have a highly transmissible virus circulating almost unchecked, with too little surveillance to track its evolution. In fact, conditions are ideal for more transmissible, more dangerous variants to emerge. But we can end the pandemic as a global health emergency this year. We have the tools, we have the know-how.
We have the tools, we have the know-how. Yes. Unevenness, inequities in the pandemic has caused this is one of the contributing factors to continuing this virus. We're looking at, remember what we're looking at, cultivating cultural responsiveness in diverse spaces and places. 4% of vaccines is what high needs, highly vulnerable countries and societies have. 70,000 people per week are still affected by COVID, the pandemic. 83% of Africa do not have access to vaccines. Cultivating Cultural Responsiveness. Cultivating Cultural Responsiveness. What are some of the comments in the chat?
So we have a comment from Dr. Oprah. Issues of hiring might be an example of sheer favoritism and nepotism. Just organizing an interview as a formality when the person to be hired has already been decided. And so I think this is in response to the video regarding the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Again, from I believe it's Winnell Fuller. We supposedly live in a country where we are all equal, but these incidents clearly demonstrate the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will say, you also are showing global effects of this as well. So not just here in the United States, but around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from Dr. Walter Murray. When you say we, who are you referring to?
When we say we in
what are we cultivating? So who is the we?
Who is the we? The we is all humanity. What seeds are we planting? What seeds are we planting? You will only get an apple if you plant an apple seed. You will not get an orange if you plant an apple seed.
Mm-hmm.
If we are planting and cultivating lack of responsiveness, lack of cultural responsiveness, if we are planting seeds of lack of cultural responsiveness, if we're planting seeds of cultural incompetence, we will get the fruits that we're getting. We will see bomb threats at HBCUs growing. We will see in South Africa racism continuing in schools and lack of social cohesion. We will see in malls and in schools across this country, the police automatic response, their automatic response to brutalizing a person of color and allowing a white person to sit without any restraint.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are seeds that we are planting and have planted. The systems have planted it. Individuals make up systems. Laws make up systems. Policies make up. We have to first and foremost change that, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I'm looking at the time. What else do we have here?
So this question, I think, is going to lead us into that next thing that you were saying that we're going to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from Lisa, and she asks, haven't the seeds already been cultivated? And so when we are cultivating,
yes,
seeds, there we go.
Yes, they are. It's given birth to the fruits, right? And the videos that we showed are fruits. It's been cultivated. So how do we get rid of the fruits? We got to go to the roots. Okay, we have to go to the roots. Okay, so let's okay. Dr. Murray says, I think we need to segment that we, because while minorities, and I don't call people of color minorities, we're not minorities.
Mm-hmm.
Words have power. Because while people of color want this cultivation to happen, the people with privilege have no incentive to cultivate culture. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so those are things, and this is why one of the reasons we're doing this webinar is to begin a conversation or help individuals have a shift of mindset. And we're offering a course, and we will talk about that at the end, but those questions that you all are asking can be further developed if you register for our course, and we will show you that information later on. But we want to focus on this. What else I see?
Is this Olubani Bami? Yeah. Apart from underlying historical reasons, cultural non-responsive individuals have a negative mindset. There's that word, mindset, yes, right? Yes. Have a negative mindset and deep-seated biases.
Absolutely. It's at the root, all right? The mindset, and in our programs and our training, again, we would love for you all to register, and we will send you we will share with you the information, but you will go through our training that will help you to see that mindsets play a major role in cultivating culturally responsiveness in diverse spaces and places.
So Dr. Murray, again, says, I don't mean to push the issue, but if I'm a white privileged male, why should I want to cultivate seeds of cultural competency?
You may not. Some may and some may not. Because for some individuals, again, as we go back to that whole mindset, if you are experiencing the benefits of the environment producing inequities and producing discriminatory practices and producing fear in others, in culturally diverse individuals, and it's not impacting you as you may think, it's not impacting you directly, and you are still able to move ahead with life and go rise up the corporate ladder and do all the things that you are able to do and want to do without having to be culturally competent, then there's not much skin in the game for you to say, let me just think about this cultural competence thing. It really must have something to it. So no, there may not be an incentive. And for most people, especially in this US, there are not a lot of incentives for them to want to shift or even to re-examine their positions and their privileges and advantages. Because as far as they can see, it doesn't impact them directly, but it does. Okay, it does impact them, maybe not directly, but it does impact. All right, so let's continue on. Oh, there's questions and comments that come in. I love it.
So, and I think this is going to get us to move to the next thing.
Okay, go ahead, read them.
This is from Jay Palmer Davidson. There are individuals within our culture that may not know how to cultivate the seed, having been misguided themselves. This is no short-term fix on this.
Absolutely.
So that is the question.
Yes.
How do we cultivate new seeds? What do we do? Where do we go from here?
All right, so let's share the screen and continue with the presentation, and it will help to answer hopefully it will help to answer some of your questions. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Here's the question. How do I cultivate cultural responsiveness? How do I do that? And in the GCSCORED, we have a framework called the Cultivating Seeds System Framework, hence Cultivate. And the first 2 steps, and this is just a very quick overview. Again, we want you to register for our courses that go in depth into answering this question. How do I cultivate cultural responsiveness or cultural competence? So the first step is to recognize your time. Those of you who are not familiar with our organization and what we do, time is your thoughts, your interactions, your mindsets, and your emotions. Recognizing is self-awareness, being aware. Remember in our definition, it talked about cultural competence. The first word was what? Awareness, being aware, identifying. So this basically is saying, how do I cultivate cultural responsiveness? I first and foremost must recognize or identify or list or admit to my thoughts, my interactions, my mindsets, and my emotions surrounding cultural incompetence, my privilege, my advantages. I must first and foremost recognize my thoughts, interactions, mindsets, and emotions as it relates to historic and contemporary systemic oppression, colonization, the impacts of those. Then we must, once we move from there, what are my mindsets about that? What do I believe? Mindsets are your worldviews, your belief systems, your attitudes about something, the lens through which you see the social other. Your emotions, how do those surround? Do you experience emotional roadblocks when issues of privilege come up? When issues of when we see these videos, do you experience an emotional roadblock? Those are the things you're going to have to do. The first step is to be able to recognize your emotions surrounding issues of culture. And remember, culture is not just about the 10% visible elements, okay? It's not only about that. 90% of culture is located at the root level, underneath the soil, behind the scenes, is unseen. Then you want to understand your time. Understand means digging deeper. If you remember seeing at the beginning of the video, it says digging deeper. Because even though understand in our framework is related to self-awareness skills, it also means digging deeper, going to the root of the issue, going to the cause, the etiology, understanding how it works, understanding where it began, understanding who were the players. And there's this issue in this country right now where individual, organizations, schools, institutions, different systems are not wanting to talk about the injustices that have occurred. They don't want children to learn it. They don't want to talk about it, because you talk about it, then you're just not letting it go. But ignoring it is what they've done for the last 400 years. And we're still seeing the fruits that we're seeing now. So it behooves us to dig and talk about it, bring it up from the unconscious to the conscious, so that we can start managing, which will be the next step. So how do I cultivate cultural responsiveness? First and foremost, you have to recognize your thoughts, interactions, mindsets, and emotions, and then understand your thoughts, interactions, mindsets, and emotions. To the next slide, why does it matter? Why does cultivating cultural responsiveness matter? Because it allows you to be neighborly. We started off talking about this is not a new construct. Being kind, being brotherly, being neighborly. It matters because what we have just witnessed in the first 2 months of 2022 is why this matters. Why this matters is because we need to change the narrative. We need to dig deep. As Jay said, this is not a quick fix, but we have to start. We have to change the narrative. We have to change the perspective of looking at, oh, let's just, apologize for our bad behaviors. Let's just cancel this person. Let's just, put this person in chains. Let's fire the police officers.
Let's pretend that it's not even happening.
Let's pretend that it's not even happening. Those are fruits that we're looking at. And as a society, global society, we need to shift the focus from just the fruits, the outcomes or the outgrowths or the behaviors or the labels or the symptoms, and go to the root. Take the time to go to the root. How do we eradicate it? We have to go to the root. How do we mitigate? We have to go to the root. And this is why it matters, right? It allows us to treat each other with empathy and kindness. So now, what do I do? What do I do? And I want to read the comments in the chat as well. So I want to just take us to this website.
And so while you're doing that,
Yes.
one of the comments that we have is again from John. He's ignoring and overlooking these important conversations means that we will repeat these mistakes over and over.
Absolutely, John, perfectly stated. Perfectly stated. If we do not recognize it, if we don't identify it, if we don't understand it, we are definitely going to repeat it. It's not going to magically go away. And we like to believe that if we don't see it, it's not there. It's not happening. Okay, so here is the course that we want you to get involved. Register today. We have a promotion, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. We have a promotion going on right now. It's 50% off, and you can register and learn more about this process. Learn more about this process and how you and I could be disruptors and cultivators in this situation that we have going on here. Any other, again, go to our website. I'm gonna put the organization's website in the chat. And I also shared with you the link to register and enroll. All right, so this enrollment is going to be from today until February 28th. You're going to be getting 50% discount, 50% discount on this three-part course. So check it out. I think you guys will love it, and it will give you the answers that you need for this discussion that we had here today. Any more questions or comments?
Let me see. Nothing that I can. Just thank you. Thank you for this educative webinar.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Dr. Okra said, if Americans had the cultural competence of tolerance, understanding, and acceptance, they could have averted the excesses of 9/11, but nobody understood Arabic, so they could not understand their call and action while in the plane. Good point, good point. Jennifer says, these seeds are deeply ingrained in societies around the world. Thank you for opening up this topic and bringing awareness to something that's deep within ourselves. Most of us are already aware of. All right. All right, so we want to thank you all for coming. We'll just keep reading the last few comments, and again, stay tuned. Make sure we have your emails. Stay tuned. We would love to see you at our next free webinar. And we want to share with you all the amazing things that GCSCORED is doing and continues to do globally and locally. We are on a mission to change the world, one seed at a time.
Dr. Laria, just before we leave, I just want to share that we have John again, who is saying he is currently going through this training. And I want to say that it is awesome. It is making me a culturally competent and responsive person.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, John, for that. Thank you, John, for that. Caroline, I see you from, Caroline is from Nigeria. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Martha. Thank you so much, Martha. Yes, we will make the recording available. Definitely, it will be available. Just send us your email and we will send it to you. Thank you for joining us. I know some of you are at different time zones, and this was a sacrifice, so we appreciate it, and that's why we wanted to make sure we started on time and ended on time. So those of you who need to go to bed, have a good night and enjoy. All right, Henrietta, thank you for joining us. Yes. Thank you all for coming.